Welcome to the second video in my series of Gran Turismo 7 and SimHub. If you missed the first video, it essentially was an overview of how you can use a separate PC running SimHub to get the telemetry data from your PS4 or PS5 and create effects that can drive things like base shakers, wind simulation, rumble pedals, and actually a whole lot more, including motion rigs if you really want to get into that. The next step in this is we're going to hook up my rig. We'll take a quick look at what's on the rig and walk you through base shakers. Okay, this is my main rig. This is the Playseat Trophy. I really like this thing. Some people think it's a bit overpriced or simplistic. For my use, it's pretty great. It is fairly lightweight until you start putting a whole bunch of stuff on it. I'm running the Fanatec GT Pro with just the standard wheel. And then we've got the pedals. I am running the brake load cell. And then you're going to see a couple extras on here and a bunch of extras on the bottom. But first of all, this is the knob sound USB audio interface and power amp. That is what's going to drive our base shakers. On top of that, or in front of that, is the Arduino Uno, which I guess it would be a micro PC. And really what I've got is a motor shield on top of the Arduino, which is underneath. And the way this works is that's going to take commands from the SimHub PC and then use the motor shield, which is taking voltage in and then sending voltage out to rumble motors and wind simulation. So we've got rumble motor there, and then the wind simulation, some just computer server fans, and then I've got some 3D shrouds on there. Assuming that you've got your PC set up and running SimHub, we got to get this thing hooked up. So here we go. Let's move the rig into place, which it is getting a bit heavy, but obviously I can lift it off the ground, so it's not terrible. For me, this is kind of ideal because it can sit over in that corner when not in use, and then when I want to use it for racing, it comes over here pretty quick. So let's move that camera and get you in closer so you can see the connections I need to do every time I want to use this rig. This is the Fanatec wheelbase. My cabling is all hidden pretty nicely, and most of the cabling is actually running through the rig itself, coming out underneath. I do have a video on that if you're, anal retentive about your cable management. So that plugs in there. Once it does, you can go ahead and turn on the PS5. Then I've got tucked away 4 cables. An IEC that goes to the Fanatec power supply, which is attached underneath the rig. Then I've got a USB extension going to the SimHub PC on this side. On this side, there's a small USB hub, which connects both the audio interface and the Arduino. Then those need power. So this is the Arduino power, which really is the voltage for the rumble motors and the wind simulation. And then that power supply is feeding the base shakers. So that's going to go to the Arduino here. And then we can just kind of tuck that down. All right, so those are our hard connections. Speaking of wired connections, we're going to just take a quick little tour here. So here's my internet router, cable internet, and on the back of it, this is the PS5 directly wired to the router. This is going to a small network switch that's hidden behind here. And I've got my Plex server, my SimHub PC, the TV itself, a network drive, various other stuff. So it's all run off of there. Reason I mention that is this setup seems to work better with a wired connection than it does on Wi-Fi. It will work on Wi-Fi. I have a portable wheel rig and simhub set up at another house, and that one's all Wi-Fi. It's also a PS4, so everything's just a little bit slower, but I do notice the lag, and I think it's from the Wi-Fi primarily. So now that the rig is plugged in, PS5 is on, we're going to move back over to the cockpit. So you can see now that it's gone green. It does say suspended after inactivity, but this is a good sign. It's green, so this is the knob sound audio interface showing that it's connected to our Windows PC. And now we're going to go ahead, hit the PS5 controller. We're going to log in and watch Gran Turismo load. One other thing I did not mention earlier is I like to use the PS5 controller with a headset for my audio most of the time. So we're going to go ahead, I hit the PS5 button there and log into that. Now I can hear the game audio through here. Just kind of helps with isolation. I also race in a league where this comes in handy for voice chat often. Okay. So in theory now, we should be connected to the simhub PC, and PS5 should be sending the data. So let's just take a quick look here. Let's jump over to simhub, and we can see waiting for data. So that's a good sign. If we go to the dashboard, it will also show waiting for data. So this is a good sign. Let's go back to our base shakers. And since it's suspended after inactivity, let's just give it a little activity. We're just going to jump on track and make it do something. That way it will receive some data and hopefully jump to life. So let's just jump on a track, and time trial sounds good. Okay, so I can already feel the rig is working. So I've got gear shifts, some road effects. Okay, good enough. And now you can see that it is showing connected. So now that it's showing connected, let's dig into this a little bit. So this USB 2.0 device is the knob sound audio interface and power amp. So what's happening is simhub is now connecting that and sending audio signals to create these effects. So it's sending that over USB from the simhub PC is sending it over USB to the knob sound interface to create the sound, which really is just vibration, but those are synonymous. And then my bass shakers are hooked up to the knob sound amp. So as an effect is sent to that, it goes through the speaker wire then. And let's just show you the bass shakers. I toyed with the idea of doing a four-corner setup, but this rig is fairly small and real estate there's not a whole lot of room. I decided to go with a front-rear setup at first anyway, and then we'll see down the road if I ever wanted to change it up, but so far I haven't felt the need to. On the bottom here, this is under the seat. I just took an old cutting board and I attached my Dayton audio transducer directly to it. And the way that this seat works is it is literally just fabric with some padding in it. So I am really pretty much sitting directly on this thing. And then, so there's some sheet metal screws that hold the transducer to the cutting board and Velcro that goes around the frame to hold the cutting board assembly in place. Front's going to be a little tougher to see, but hopefully you can see that transducer right there, which is connected, screwed, fastened directly to the pedal board. So I'm feeling that through my feet while we're under here. Power supply, a USB hub, and various cable management stuff going on. Again, here's the knob sound audio interface. And what you have to do in here really is you can set this up as a mono system, left, right, front, rear, which probably will work just fine in my case. Front, left, right, etc., etc. I used the custom channel map just because it gives you, it opens up some more parameters. And really what you need to do in here is you can use these parameters to kind of balance the different effects that you have. You're going to find yourself going back and forth between sound output and the effects profile. Any effects that you have in here, you'll be able to tune the actual effect and the volume in here. But in the sound output, you can also tune the output on this page. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, I'll give you one example. Engine vibration. Let me back up a little bit. My front to rear, I have an overall balance. I didn't want to max everything out at 100% because I don't want that amplifier ever really pushing 100%. Plus there's a knob on the top of it that I can reach with my foot and sort of dial the mass. It's like a master volume. But because I'm directly sitting on the rear transducer, I brought that level down a bit to more closely balance the front, which is at 80%. In the case of an effect like engine vibration, most cars, the engine's going to be in the front. So I had this set up so that when this effect was being triggered, it would I would feel it more on the front of the rig. So same with gear shift. It's going to be more toward the front of the car in most cars. So that's how I set this up. You can use it to kind of balance your front to rear outputs. And anything that you have added as an effect, whether it's turned on or off, will show up here. And then on the effects profiles where you tune the actual effect. So hopefully that's not too confusing here so far. The only effects, so I do have a bunch of effects shown here. Whatever, 4 of them are, so half of them I don't actually use anymore. I will say this, when it comes to the bass shaker effects, less is more, and I would start with 1 or 2 effects and then make sure you kind of dial those in and get it where you want before you start adding more. Mostly because they'll kind of overlap and become a bunch of mush of your rig just shaking all the time, and it doesn't really feel like it's like specific effects. Let's start with RPMs. I used to use engine vibration for this. You can kind of go back and forth. They both served the same purpose, but I wouldn't have both of them on. RPMs is simulating the RPMs of the engine. So what I did is I didn't even really mess with the response curve because I don't, mostly the way this works for me, and the reason it's at 3% is when I am in a race lobby and I green up to start racing. So now you're basically in the car. Once I do that, I will feel the engine has now turned on, and I can feel this just very slight rumble. And what that does for me is it lets me know that this system is working, that my Simhub bass shakers are working, because sometimes they don't. Sometimes I need to reconnect or restart Simhub, or I have some weird glitch of a problem. But once I'm actually on track, this really gets overridden completely by everything else. And let's just go over the effects that I don't use. So that would be engine vibration, because of that. Speed can kind of give a sense of, it'll vibrate the faster the car is going. It'll give a sense of vibration that your car is going fast. It didn't really work great for me. I prefer to use the simulated road texture and road impacts. So I turned that one off. Wheels lock and wheels slip is essentially traction loss. So it's, wheel spin, wheels lock would be your brakes locking up. Wheel slip would be your, whatever wheels are driving the car slipping. When I installed the rumble pedals, I turned these off on the bass shakers. So I was able to get more of an isolated effect so that wheel spin is on the accelerator only, and wheels locking, brakes locking up is on the brake pedal only. Then let's get into these actual effects. So as I said on RPMs, I actually just left all of this default, I believe. not really any tuning. For gear shift, I am at 33 hertz and 76% volume output. I also have this selected as a high priority effect, and really what that means is that if there are multiple effects going on, SimHub is going to give this a priority. So really all the time I do the gear shift, I'm going to feel that thud. At 33 hertz, that's pretty low frequency, and I didn't really mess with anything else. That should be pretty self-explanatory what gear shift is. Simulated road texture and road impacts are similar. Simulated road texture would basically be more like when you're just driving down the road and you'll get this sense, this like rumble as if you were driving over a road. And then road impacts would be more like you go over the curb, or you hit a bump, or there's a dip in the road, something like that. Those would be more like impacts. That you'll also get that with vehicle impacts. So both of those will get triggered. What I have for my simulated road texture, I have it at a fairly low volume, 26%. I'm at a base effect frequency of 36 hertz and a high effect of 48. And the reason you would want some different frequencies on theirs is it will help differentiate between the effects. In this case, these could probably just overlap, but my road impacts are at lower frequencies and a higher output. So when it hits, I really can kind of feel it over the simulated road textures. But these are my settings. You could start here, you could try something else, also have that one as a high priority effect. But the real story here is I really only have, for my base shakers, when I'm sitting in a lobby idling, I have one effect. When I'm driving, I really have just these three effects. And that is it. So again, you're going to bounce back and forth between your effects profile and your sound output. You can kind of fine tune things. So if you find you put this at 100% road impacts, but then you went down here and your road impacts, where are they? Road impacts, I'm at 95 and 85%. So I could bump it up a little bit if I wanted to try to fine tune, but I'm pretty well set with where I'm at on this. What else? I think that's pretty much it with base shakers. So we've gone over the actual physical connections, sort of the networking, and the base shakers, specifics, and the settings. I do want to do a quick rundown of networking. Your router in your house is connected to the internet. You've got Gran Turismo running on your PS4 or PS5, and you've got a separate PC running SimHub. Both of those are connected to your router. Now that can be wireless, it can be Wi-Fi, and it can be wired, or a combination. The way this works is Gran Turismo is broadcasting that data at all times. As long as the SimHub PC knows what to look for, hopefully all you need is just to input that IP address like we showed in the first video. Then SimHub can receive all that data and then do stuff with it. So it can take that data and make a custom dashboard. It can drive the base shakers like we talked about here. It can drive rumble pedals and wind simulation like we'll talk about on probably the next video. And you could actually use it for motion rig and some other cool stuff, which I'm not going to get too far into that. But hopefully this visually represents how this is all working. In the next video, we are going to hit wind simulation and maybe rumble pedals at the same time. We'll see how far we get. But keep those questions coming. I can tell by the analytics on my channel that this is a much more popular series or video. That first video is getting a bunch of hits, far more than normal. So if there are specifics about Gran Turismo and SimHub, please drop those in the comments. Somebody did ask, were there other PS5 games that work with SimHub? I have reached out to the developer. From what I can tell, though, it's really Gran Turismo 7 GT Sport, which is, I think no longer really a thing. And maybe F1, one or more of the F1 games. It's not really clear which of those other games. But SimHub was primarily developed for PC games, and then some of these console games, really any console game that is broadcasting the telemetry data, SimHub can then receive that data, and as long as SimHub knows what to do with the data, that's really how it works. Hopefully that helps explain it.